So if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I myself was once a fearful avoidant attachment style. I went through a lot of struggles in life. And, so much of why this channel is here today is because I am sharing a lot of my own healing journey and, what's worked and the different tools and learnings in my own research. And so I figured I'd try something out and hopefully you follow along and get a lot out of it. But I'm going to share every Sunday something really personal about my own journey and really the lessons that helped me in exactly the order, or at least close to the order that they were supportive to me, so that you can follow that same journey and also have the same healing. So we're going to start today from a personal video that I hope helps you tremendously. So, as many of you know, if you've been following this channel for a while, I was somebody who struggled with addiction at a very young age. Just before I turned 15, became addicted to painkillers after a knee surgery and really struggled until about 20 and a half years old in a big, big way. And this was something that was extremely painful to go through. Like addiction itself, I say this all the time, but if anybody has ever been through addiction, I think it like tortures your soul a little bit. But that sounds really dramatic, but it's just a very torturous experience. It's that you're just obsessed, eat, live, breathe, think, like just so fixated on something, and you really become a ghost of yourself and really lose yourself in the process in such a big way. And of course, you become an addict because there's first a lot of pain preceding this. So, I don't talk about it a ton, but there was a lot that I experienced as a child. And I know that that's so many of you watching this channel. Now, a big way out of that pain for me wasn't just doing the work on the subconscious mind and learning to recondition and heal and really target root cause, but my whole journey of healing actually began with exploring a lot of spiritual teachings from sort of a place of desperation and fear. But what allowed me to really, develop a relationship to God, something that was extremely powerful for me, something I think is unique to everybody in their own way. And I'm not saying that anybody absolutely needs to have a relationship to God in the way that I see fit. I definitely think everybody has a unique flavor, and I respect everybody's beliefs around that topic. But a lot of spiritual teachings tell you that when suffering is ripe, when suffering is really happening, God is near. And so as a very early part of my own healing journey, I started looking at that. I was like, okay, I've suffered so much, and what is the purpose? Like, if this is actually for some sort of purpose, what can it be? And something that's really important to know, and I'm going to take you through a really powerful exercise in a little bit, but I just want to give you a little bit of a backstory, is that we all have a conditioned self. Right. And our conditioned self isn't necessarily our true self, right? Our conditioned self is the way that we've been conditioned to see pain because of our experiences. So, you look at a young baby, and a baby comes into the world, and a baby learns that, okay, you're going to get punished for, being too loud, perhaps, and rewarded for being quiet. And so as a result of that experience, the child adapts, and they adapt to become more quiet because they think, okay, well, if I'm more quiet, my needs will get met. Now, that's their unique conditioning. Somebody else's conditioning could be totally the opposite, right? Somebody could live in a situation where they have a huge family with a lot of siblings, and the louder they are and the more they take up space, the more attention they get in a large family. And so their conditioning could cause them to move in that direction. But we all have very unique experiences that condition us and really shape our personality. There's this old theme in a lot of spiritual teachings as well that talk about how, when you are suffering, a lot of what's suffering is your attachments to your conditioning, right? You think something's being taken away from you, and maybe that's for, the greater good. I'm sure everybody's had the experience of losing somebody in a relationship, going through a breakup and feeling like the world is ending, and later looking back and being like, oh, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. But you didn't know it at the time because you were attached to your ideas, your concepts about how it should be. And, you had a certain idea of like, wait, I want to be with this person. I'm attached to my vision of the future with this person, or I'm attached to the commitments that I've made or the things that we've done here together. And so sometimes when we suffer, when we lose things, we lose somebody from our lives, and it's so painful at the time. But if we could look ahead into time and go, wait, something beautiful is going to come from this. Like everything's going to change. I'm going to end up in a way better relationship 5 years later. You might not suffer as much at the time, but because we don't know what we don't know yet, we suffer so much more. Okay. So there's this idea that it's really our conditioning that is suffering the most. It's not necessarily who we are at our core, but the attachments that we're losing that are being peeled away. And so we all have this conditioned self, and this conditioned self is really the personality traits and adaptations we make and behaviors we have, but it's also the attachments we have to things, the idea of how things should be according to our conditioning, our personality. And you see this in really big ways across society, but you see this in really small ways. We think things like maybe you wake up and you're on your way to work in the morning and you think it shouldn't be raining. And we get in resistance to reality. We fight with reality over how things should be according to the conditions that we think the world should have, right? From our perspective. But when you go into that space of being in resistance to what's happening, and especially what's outside of your control, well, now you get into a position where you're just in resistance for no reason, right? You're almost creating your own suffering by being in resistance to the things that you can't control. Now, what happens, and how this also happens from a codependency and enmeshment perspective, is as a result of things not going the way that we like and the pain of the resistance we experience, that then causes us to fear other people being in pain. We're like, oh, I know what pain is like, and I know how painful it is to suffer. And so I really don't want other people to be in pain. And so for myself as a person, I was very codependent, and it was a fearful avoidant attachment style. As I started my healing journey, I was able to move through a lot of things and really do a lot of healing. But I also noticed myself being just terrified of other people being in pain. And I would go to great lengths to stop them from being in pain, even if it meant sort of weaponizing my empathy against myself. In other words, even if it meant, violating my own boundaries to make sure somebody was okay, even if they had been hurtful to me first, or they weren't a healthy person to be around, like these types of things that you see a lot with codependence that probably, if you're watching this video, you can relate to. But here's the really interesting part. If you dare to look, you might see another side to pain. And this goes back to this idea that pain is not one-sided. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of spiritual teachings that talk about how when pain or suffering is near, there's also this opportunity that exists at the same time. Okay. So I heard about this and I was like, let's really take a look. And this is pretty far into my healing journey. And you have to stay, if you're not at this point yet, stay till the end, because I'll give you an actual exercise that will literally help transform this so deeply. I just want to let you know that we actually have a really cool promotion happening at PDS for the month of April. And it is a spin to win. So you can actually go to our PDS website and there's like a free trial, there's free membership, there is, all these sort of spin to win things. And I'll put a link down below and you can actually click on the wheel yourself, see what you spin, and see what cool promotion you actually end up obtaining. And this is just available for a limited time. Some of it's a 7-day trial plus a free course, 14-day free trial plus a free course. There's some cool stuff in there, some of which have a really good long-term value. So I'll put the link down below if you want to check it out. And specifically, I would dive into, if you're looking to heal a relationship with somebody on this topic, there's a great course you can check out called How to Repair Any Relationship. And it's about how to vet if somebody's going to do the work and then how to repair it if they're all in with you. But I sat down one day and I was sitting at my desk, and I've been doing a lot of personal growth work and healing and a lot of reading and researching and meditating and all these things. And I was like, okay, I had come a pretty far way. And I was like, okay, let me look at a really painful time in my life and see if this holds up. Okay, I was kind of like testing this. And I sat down and I was like, well, when I really struggled with addiction, there was something I was really holding on my heart. It was really weighing on me. And it was that at a point when I was struggling, I reached out to friends and family, and I just, God bless all of them. They were going through their own stuff in a really big way at the time, but I reached out for help and support, and it really didn't come. And if anybody's ever been around an addict, there's good reasons for that too, right? I wasn't the most predictable person. I probably wouldn't have invested my time in helping myself at that time either. I wasn't showing up in any good ways. And so, I reached out for help, and I just didn't get the support that I was hoping for or needing in any way. And I really held that deeply. That was weighing heavy on my heart. And I had a lot of resentment and a lot of hurt around that. And I was like, yeah, kind of like, see, this doesn't make sense. But I asked myself these questions. I asked myself, okay, when I felt really alone during those times, these things that I know I'm still, that are still weighing on me, how did this serve me? If pain is supposed to be helpful, if there's an opportunity, how did this serve me? And as I started writing, I couldn't believe what started coming out. I was like, whoa, because I was alone, I actually found this relationship to God, which was very healing for me. Because I was alone, I started getting into personal growth work. and learning who I was and actually building a relationship to myself. And that's been one of the best gifts I've ever received because I was alone. I was forced to learn about accountability and step out of this victim mindset that I had put myself in. And that was huge for me. That gave me so much freedom in my future. Because I was alone, I had to learn to be more resourceful. And that led me into being able to have all these life skills that in turn, over time, I didn't know this at that exact moment, but allowed me to build businesses and share and teach and connect with other people in such a beautiful way. Because I felt alone, I finally grew up. I was able to look at other hard things in my life and also be accountable for those things, or look at other hard things in my life and move through those things, actually process some of those hard things because I was finally doing this type of work. And I sat there and I wrote and I wrote, and like the tears just streamed and streamed. And it was tears of relief, like the deepest, like most profound relief. I often said, when I've shared this story with friends or family before, that it almost felt like somebody was sucking like black out of my heart, like just this feeling that was weighing so heavy on me. And it was just like pouring out with release. And, when I did that work, I was so touched by how transformative doing that was that I started looking at like, what else can we do this on? And I sat down and I looked at other really hard times in my life, like painful breakups or painful things that had happened in childhood. And I was like, okay, how did this serve me? What did I learn? How did I grow? Another great question to ask is, what was I forced to let go of that was no longer working in my life? Because sometimes I think when painful things happen, it's also, really pulling us away from those attachments we have to maybe the wrong relationship or the wrong friendship or the wrong job that's maybe, keeping us at a glass ceiling and not allowing us to really reach our full potential. So this exercise becomes, and there's a second part to this because not everybody's moved through the pain yet, okay? And I want to be really clear about that. But if you sit down and you look at a hard time in your life, especially if you feel like you've kind of moved beyond this or come a long way around the topic, and let's just use the example of like an old breakup, an ex that maybe you felt like you were stuck on for a long time, and you sit down and you were like, what did this painful experience teach me? How did I learn from this experience? What new skills did I develop from this experience that have served me from that point forward? For me, for example, I learned all about personal growth and then got to teach it and share it here later on. And so you look at like, wow, how did I learn and how did I grow? But then how did those learnings, those skills even serve me forward in my life? How can they serve me going forward in my life? And what did I let go of that wasn't working? Okay, that job, that person. And if you sit with this exercise, and this is part 1 of 2, we've got a second one if you're still in the pain. If you sit with this exercise, it will change your life. It will change how you see suffering. If you sit with this and I mean like spend at least 30 minutes on it, write it out, journal, see what comes up for you, and look at the different aspects of life. Look at your career area of your life, your financial area of your life, look at your mental or learning area of life, look at your emotional or personal growth area of life. And after you do career, financial, mental, emotional, look at your spiritual area of life, your physical area of life, like your health, your routines, the way you show up for yourself, your physical space can be included in that. And then relationships, friendships, family, romantic relationships. And when you can sit with that and really look at those different aspects and how you grew or developed skills, you will realize that pain isn't always one-sided. And I don't mean that pain's not hard. Okay, I want to be really clear about that. I don't mean that pain isn't really, really hard, especially when you're in the thick of it. It's a lot. And it's not something that I wish for anybody. But also, pain sometimes brings us the most powerful lessons. And if you're still in your pain right now, here's a variation of this exercise that I have for you. If you're still in it, I want you to ask yourself this, because the faster you come up with the answers to these questions, the faster you're going to move through this. I want you to ask yourself, what is this painful experience trying to teach me? How do I need to be there for myself more or show up for myself in a way that I haven't yet? I want you to ask yourself, how can I grow through this experience? Or what skills do I need to develop to help me weather this storm and come out the other side more quickly? Is there somebody I need to ask for support? Or is that support going to come from myself? And I want you to look and really look at that perspective. Maybe sometimes when we have nobody, just like at one point I felt like that, at certain times, right? We feel like that, but that's sometimes because that's your time to really figure out who you are and dig deep into yourself and be there for you. And so I want you to ask yourself those questions. Now, if you choose to look at painful events through that lens, okay? Under the assumption, let's just say we have no idea what the purpose of pain is, but let's say we're going to just commit to spending our lives going, you know what? I'm going to choose to see pain as a growth opportunity every time it comes. I'm going to choose to see pain as, hey, this is really hard and I'm going to honor my pain. I'm going to honor how I feel about it. I'm not going to skip over feeling the feelings. But when I've had a chance to do that and really like allow myself to feel my emotions in my body, I'm going to move into a space where I'm like, okay, what is this trying to show me? What is this trying to teach me? How can I grow to move through this experience even better? What do I need to learn? For some people, it's boundaries. For some people, it's vulnerability that their painful experience is trying to teach them. For some people, it's being able to show up for yourself or be more accountable for a certain area of life. If you can look at that through that lens or perspective, you're going to not only move through your pain and suffering so much more quickly, but you're going to realize that pain and suffering aren't as scary as you think. I think pain and suffering are so scary. And I'm going to tell you how this comes back to codependency and enmeshment in just a moment. I think that pain and suffering are so scary when we see it as only one-sided. It feels needless and unnecessary, and there's no good that comes from it. It feels so heavy to live like that, to feel like that, to think like that. And then we feel mad. We feel like, why? Why is this happening to me? Why is God putting me in this situation? Or why is this even taking place? And then we bear the heaviness of perceiving it that way. It's like as if the pain and suffering weren't enough. We're now going to be in extra resistance to it. We're now going to be in a place where we think it's unfair and we judge it instead of trying to see what we can take away from it. And that's just going to add insult to injury, right? It's not going to make it any easier to do that. And so if you can look at it that way, you'll move through it quickly. You'll grow every time you go through a hard experience, which will put your life into this really revved up engine of being able to hyper grow through all these challenges, and you won't be so afraid. Now, how this then comes into and relates to codependency is that when it comes to codependency, part of why, just like I shared, I was so scared for other people to be in pain, that I was going to violate my own boundaries to make sure no one was suffering or no one was in pain. Well, I realized that, wait, maybe by every time that I do that, I enable other people to not take their lessons away from their own pain. Maybe I actually rob them of any purpose that pain has in their lives. And so by looking at, okay, how is this pain trying to show them something or teach them something? And then being able to share that with somebody, being able to go to them and say, hey, what is the lesson here for you? Is there anything that you can grow through this experience? And I would, to be really clear, I would validate their pain first, right? I wouldn't just jump into that. I would validate their pain. I would be there for them. But then I would say to somebody, what skills can you develop to move through this that can support you? Is there anything that this experience is trying to show you or grow you in a specific way? Is there anything that this painful experience is trying to force you to let go of that's not working for you? I would ask those same questions and be there instead of doing things for other people in my life, be able to hold more space and be there from a place of support and love and care, but without the interference. And that was this huge way of jumping out of all of these codependent patterns, because in doing that, I got to see all these other people grow in a really beautiful way. And I'm reminded of this old quote from a wonderful book, a really easy book to read if you ever are interested. It's called The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. He's the author of the Four Agreements. You can read the book in one night. I recommend it. But in that book, there's a line and it says, love doesn't pity, love respects. And I think when we look at, this sort of angle of things, love doesn't pity. Love isn't like, oh, you can't do it. I have to do it for you. Poor you. You can't do anything. You're the victim. No, love is like, you may be victimized by this experience, but I trust that you're going to get to the other side. I respect you enough to know that you're going to learn, that you can grow through this. And I'm going to be here for you, but I'm not going to do it for you. And so hopefully, if you take the time to really sit with this exercise, to really sit through your own experiences of the past, if you've come through the other side, or even this exercise of in this moment, if you're still in it, what is this trying to show me right now? What is this trying to teach me? Then I think this will change your perspective on suffering forever, because it did that for me and has definitely changed mine. So with that, I would love to hear if you have any beautiful shares or realizations that came to you. I mean, some really beautiful ones. It's sometimes when you go through a painful breakup, that actually detaches you from somebody else, but attaches you to the relationship with yourself, right? Sometimes we find ourselves through suffering that way. And there's countless examples of this, but if you feel comfortable sharing, I would love to hear from you in the comments about how pain or suffering have actually had another side to it. It doesn't take away from this painful side here, but there's another part of the story and what was yours? So that's it. Thank you for being here and stopping by. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any daily videos, and I will see you next time.